Tathagata Roy is the former governor of Meghalaya and Tripura. He is also the former president of Bengal BJP. But we are going to talk to him today about his seminal works, Ja Chilo Amar Desh in Bengali and My People Uprooted, the Exodus of Hindus from East Pakistan and Bangladesh, brought out by Synergy Books. Professor Roy has been writing extensively on Hindus from that part of the world, what was East Bengal once, which later became East Pakistan and is today known as Bangladesh. We are going to talk to him about the condition of Hindus in Bangladesh today after Sheikh Hasina's rather dramatic exit from her country. Professor Roy, hello and welcome to The Print.
Thank you.
Professor Roy, on August 5th, Sheikh Hasina fled Bangladesh in an Air Force helicopter. This happened after a students' quota protest movement which became a mass movement for her ouster. Targeted attacks were reported against Hindus in Bangladesh right after. It made global headlines, even New York Times wrote about it. Some of us in Delhi and in Kolkata started writing about it on X and also on websites and newspapers. But it soon became the narrative from Bangladesh, became about attacks on Awami League workers and leaders, which is also true. There were Muslims, policemen as well, who were attacked and killed. Now, there is a lot of fake news allegations against Indian ex-users and also news outlets from mostly Bangladeshi ex-users and influencers and media personnel who are saying that, look, yes, there was violence, but the violence was not because they were Hindus, but because they were Awami League leaders, workers, voters. What do you have to say about that?
First, let me answer your question directly, and then I'll go a little bit into the background.
Right.
Because the travails of the Bangladeshi Hindus is practically unknown in this world to most people, including the Bangladeshi Hindus themselves. Right. The way the Punjab Exodus is known to the world, definitely to India, Bangladeshi Hindu Exodus hasn't had even a tenth of its exposure. So I'll come to that a little later, but let me answer your question. The answer is yes and no. The Bangladeshi Hindus are targeted because they were Awami League supporters and also because they are Hindus. But if you ask me, between the two of which has a greater share, which factor has prompted their tormentors more to torment them, I would say it is 80–90% because they were Hindus and 10% because they were Awami League supporters. They were Awami League supporters out of compulsion because they had no other party to support. But the real reason why they were tormented is because they are Hindus, and tormenting, persecuting, torturing, killing, raping non-believers, kafirs, is something, I'm very sorry to say, it is ingrained in certain ayats of Islam. Those who have studied the Quran and the principal hadiths would know about it. Persecution of Bengali Hindus in Bangladesh did not start yesterday. Earlier this month when Sheikh Hasina left. It did not even start in 1971. It began in 1946, even during the British rule, when by which time the British had left, British had completely were no longer interested in governing India. It began in Noakhali. That part of the persecution is a little known to the world because Mohandas Gandhi had visited Noakhali and tried to get the Hindus to come back to their half-burnt houses without naming anyone, which was Mohandas' style. Because, and excuse me, because I am not using the more common thing, because I have no reason to call him Mahatma. I call him Mohandas Gandhi, which is the name that his father gave him. Mohandas Gandhi's style was that never blame a Muslim. A Muslim can do no wrong. You go on bending over backwards to appease the Muslims. So according to that, he went on trying to spread the message of love and compassion among Hindus in 1946, and then nothing came out of it. In fact, Irfan Habib, in one of his treatises, has said that nothing has come out of it. So that apart, that was number one. The second phase of persecution, which was a really horrible one, was in February and March 1950. February and March 1950, the whole thing was engineered by a person called Aziz Ahmed. Aziz Ahmed at that time was the Chief Secretary of East Pakistan, and he had practically absolute power over all the ministers, everyone. He was an ICS officer, and Aziz Ahmed has been described by B.K. Nehru in his autobiography as a notoriously anti-Hindu person, Aziz Ahmed. I mean, it will take hours to explain what, or to describe what had happened during the 1950 pogrom. But it was a pogrom, not a riot. And what had happened during the 1950 pogrom, which was concentrated mainly in the districts of Barishal and Dhaka. Just give you one example. On 12th February 1950, all trains that crossed a bridge then called the Anderson Bridge across the wide Meghna River between two stations called Ashuganj and Bhairab, all trains were stopped in mid-river, all Hindus were killed, and they were thrown out of the train onto the river. I got this from an eyewitness who was spared only because he was wearing a pair of pajamas. Those days, Hindus' usual apparel was dhoti and shirt. So this was 1950. I will not go any further about this. It's a huge thing. It's all described in my book. Then after 1950, Nehru inked a very stupid pact with Pakistan, which was called Delhi Pact or Nehru Liaquat Pact, which said that each country will look after its own minorities, and the Bangladeshi Hindus, the East Pakistani Hindus who have come over to India, they'll go back to East Pakistan. Incredibly stupid, because it could not have been unknown to Nehru that Aziz Ahmed himself had engineered it. But you know, Nehru's mindset was like this, that he used to live in his own make-believe world. And when the reality clashed with truth, with his beliefs, he chose the beliefs, like Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai and all that. So after that, the Pakistanis decided that if they mount a full-scale pogrom, makes too much noise. So they decided to squeeze out the Hindus, you know. Just like you squeeze out toothpaste from a tube, squeeze out the Hindus. So it went on, and Hindus started leaving en masse. The intellectual class in East Pakistan before partition was, I would say, 70–80% Hindu. It's been described by Dr. Meghnad Saha, the famous scientist, who himself was an East Bengali Hindu. His native place was in Dhaka. And the entire intellectual class, or the, so to say, the upper caste Hindus, they all left. Now, this kept on going. In between, there were conflagrations, like in 1964. 1964, there was this Hazrat Bal incident in Kashmir, as a result of which the jihadi rage had been kindled, and they decided that the easiest way to vent this rage was to kill Bengali Hindus in Bangladesh or East Pakistan then. So that happened. Then in 1971, the West Pakistanis, the Biharis and the Bengali section of the collaborators, they had come to the conclusion that it is only because of Hindus that Pakistan is getting dismembered, or it is about to get dismembered. So they started killing indiscriminately. One of the worst locations of killing was Jagannath Hall in Dhaka University. there's a full-scale book on it, and it's also been described in my book. And it's a horrible thing, nothing less than, I mean, it could easily compare with the sort of pogrom that we had seen of the Jews in Nazi Germany, except that there was no concentration camps. They simply used to cut their throats and throw them away. This was the picture during the Pakistani times. Then during the Bangladeshi times, there were conflagrations, but more often this toothpaste-like squeezing out. And conflagrations did take place in 1988 when Irshad declared Islam to be the state religion of Bangladesh. Then in between 2001 and 2006, when Khaleda Zia came to power in Bangladesh.
With Jamaat.
With Jamaat.
Yeah.
And then later on it went on. That toothpaste-like thing was in. So this is more or less the background. The persecution, the mentality of persecution of Hindus, that they are easy prey, is ingrained in the section of the Bangladeshi Muslim mind, and occasionally we have seen this. And one thing that must be mentioned in this regard is that the closest cousins of the Bangladeshi Hindus are the West Bengali Hindus, who were supremely callous and undeterred, totally undeterred about it. Couldn't give a damn, because they had been wallowing in a mixture of Gandhian and Marxian universality, which told them that once again you can't speak ill of a Muslim. Who did it? Who drove the Bangladeshi Hindus out? And when I am talking about these West Bengali Hindus, they include a very fat section of the emigres from Bangladesh who had themselves been driven out. They all turned Marxist. There was a reason for that. That is different. That is Nehru's neglect of theirs. But they all turned this kind of so-called secular, and they tried to hide this as far as possible. As a matter of fact, this is the first time I am seeing any kind of mass consciousness about the persecution of Hindus in Bangladesh. I wrote this book. I began it in 1995, the English edition, and Bengali edition I wrote much later. English edition I wrote in 1995. I couldn't find a publisher for it. Can you believe it? With great difficulty, I got a publisher with the help of a Bangladeshi Muslim friend. He said he was getting books called Salam Azad. He was getting books published here and there. So he introduced me, and that's how I got it. Now, at last, some kind of consciousness has been aroused. But once again, I'm sorry to say that the consciousness in West Bengal among the closest cousins is the minimum.
Professor Roy, you spoke at length about the persecution of Hindus in that part of Bengal, which is Bangladesh today. Coming back to what is happening currently, Mohammad Yunus, the caretaker to the interim government, has visited a temple. There are talks about declaring a 3-day national holiday during Durga Puja, which is the biggest festival for Bengalis. Even during the violence that took place once Hasina left the country, there were news that came out that students from madrasas are guarding temples. How hopeful are you of things improving for the Bangladeshi Hindu?
Absolutely not hopeful. Absolutely not hopeful. First thing, Mohammad Yunus, I have met him once or twice. It is my impression from what I talked with him, and also the way he has been conducting himself ever since he came to this post. He is a total novice in politics. He doesn't know the first thing about politics. So he is doing this and that. Probably someone is prodding. First thing is, secondly, he is a very old man. He is 84. So with all these things, he will not be able to move anything. Jamaat is a very potent force. When I was governor, I had it from a liberal and very a person with whom I had become intimate, a Bangladeshi diplomat, who told me that the way madrasas were proliferating in Bangladesh was fearsome. Fearsome, nothing left less than that. He told me. Obviously I cannot name that person. I had tried to bring it to the notice of the central government. Sushma ji was the External Affairs Minister at that time. Sushma ji told me, the little that I can tell you, Sushma ji told me that what can we do? Our best bet is Hasina. So for the Bangladeshi Muslim, Bangladeshi Hindus, the best bet is Hasina. So we can only lean on Hasina a little bit and try to get her to take care of it. But Hasina was trying to balance both sides. He was also flirting with the Hifazat-e-Islam. So not a good policy. It didn't get her any benefits.
It's interesting you speak of Sheikh Hasina, and her and how she tried to flirt with radical Islam while also keeping up a secular image. There is a binary, Professor Roy, which I have noticed in Bangladesh in the past 2 years. I have engaged with this issue, that Hasina is good for Hindus. Her political opponents, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which is also, we will come to that a little later, which is clubbed with the Jamaat, are bad for Hindus. Do you think it's too easy a binary, and do you think that's also part of the current crisis in Bangladeshi politics?
The binary is largely true, but in politics there is no white and black. Everything is in shades of grey. Hasina was a much lighter shade of grey than these people who have come to power now. Now, I am not very clear as to where the power rests. But it is my suspicion that to a large extent it rests on the Jamaat, because they are a very organized lot, very motivated lot, and a very, very troublesome, very malevolent lot. So they are dark grey. Hasina was light grey, something like that you could say. Now Hasina had some personal grudges to settle against the fundamentalists, the Islamists. First thing, they killed her father. Secondly, they tried to kill her, that grenade attack.
Yes.
2006. 2006, there was a comrade of hers called Ivy Rahman. She was killed. It's a horrible sight. Yeah. Her lying with her face down, having been hit by the shrapnels of the grenade. So she had done some very good things, like hanging people like Salahuddin Qadir Chaudhuri and what's the name of that guy? Abdul Qadir Mullah or someone like that, the head of the Nizam Islam. She had hanged all these people, which was a very good thing, particularly Salahuddin Qadir Chaudhuri. But she did not do the right thing in flirting with the Hifazat-e-Islam. Didn't get her anything. On the other hand, now Hifazat-e-Islam is one of the factors which had engineered her ouster.
Professor Roy, at an informal gathering around 2 weeks back in Delhi, I put out the point that the Jamaat will become very powerful in Bangladesh now, and that's a problem because as recently as September, October last year, when the country was prepping for the elections, January 7 elections, the Jamaat had said, and it made headlines across Bangladesh, that they want Sharia law in Bangladesh. Enough of man-made laws, now there's time for Sharia law. Now, when I said this, it was hotly contested by others who were there, foreign editors, etc., who said that, look, you are looking at the current Bangladeshi issue through the prism of the Jamaat, but it's a students' revolution which has ousted a dictator. And now a new Bangladesh will be formed, where which will take the country closer to democracy. I want to ask you, and now the Jamaat and the BNP's coalition has fallen through. It happened only recently, 2 days ago, where the BNP said they are no longer in an alliance of the Jamaat. How powerful? You already spoke about it, but if you could expand on the thought, how powerful do you think the Jamaat will get? Because as I understand, it's very organized as a religious entity, but politically it had it had leaned on the BNP. It had also incidentally leaned on Hasina, because there was a period in Bangladesh's political history when Hasina and the Jamaat were close, when she was out of power. How, as an individual political force in Bangladesh, how powerful do you think the Jamaat will get?
I have already described Jamaat by 3 adjectives. Number 1 is extremely organized. Number 2 is extremely motivated. Number 3 is extremely malevolent. Jamaat is poison. Jamaat is what was being done to India by people like Zakir Naik, what has been done in England by this person, what's his name? Missing his name. All over Europe, right now the anti-Islamic mentality that is crystallizing all over Europe is a result of their consciousness emerging as to what militant Islam is. What is militant Islam? In view of that, what you had been told, or what the foreign journalists had said that you are looking through it, it's an extremely naive view. It's an extremely naive view because these people who say such things, they look at Islam through the prism of their own religion. It is impossible to understand Islam through the prism of Hinduism or Judaism or Christianity or Buddhism or even Marxism. It's a different ball game altogether. Islam is a thing that requires deep study to understand what and how it can motivate people and to what end. So if you catch on to that, you will find that this is a thing which gives rise to a party like Jamaat, and it's very difficult to thwart them. A party like Jamaat possibly would have, say, 5-10% support among them. But no one is prepared to rubbish them. No one is prepared to defy what they are saying, One of the few people who have realized this and have said it out loud is a Dutch politician by the name of Geert Wilders. You might have heard of him. He said that there are hundreds and millions of good Muslims. There is no good Islam. This is something that drives people to hate non-Muslims, the beliefs in Islam. Now, I'm quite sure that if you point it out to them, they will say, no, it is said in the Quran, to you, your religion, to you, me, my religion, and what is bandied about in West Bengal, that the religion is to every individual. It is absolutely not. If you read the Objectives Resolution of Pakistan, you will see that Liaquat Ali Khan had clearly said that Islam is not merely a matter of private beliefs. It will overshadow all aspects of life. So therefore, it is very naive to say, as your detractors had said, that this is a students' movement and this will take it towards democracy. You must understand, democracy is anathema to Islam. Democracy and Islam are not consistent. The two can't coexist. Islam believes in Nizam-e-Mustafa or something like that, Nizam-e-Islami or Nizam-e-Mustafa. Democracy is an entirely different thought altogether.
Sir, since Jamaat is already very powerful, perhaps it's going to get more powerful. America had made the binary of good Taliban, bad Taliban in Afghanistan. Should the Indian state therefore make a binary of good Jamaat, bad Jamaat? Do you think, because India has to do business with Bangladesh, so do you think that such a binary is possible?
Look at the result of the binary. America had created that binary of good Taliban and bad Taliban, and what did it get America? It got them 9/11. It got them, they had to run away from Afghanistan with the tail between their legs. It got them an ally in Pakistan who eventually drifted off to the Chinese side. So it is a wrong policy. Taliban cannot be good. There can be good Muslims who believe in democracy and who try to run the country on democratic lines. But they are pretty rare, I must say. How many Muslim countries do you know who practice democracy in the sense that we understand democracy? Even Sheikh Mujib Rahman, towards the end, around 1974, he drove out his comrades who had believed in democracy. People like Sayyid Nazrul Islam and Tajuddin Ahmed, particularly Tajuddin Ahmed. And he created this thing called Bakshal. That was one of the reasons for his downfall. Bakshal was a completely dictatorial setup that he had created, Bangladesh Krishak Shramik League. So it doesn't work. The two are not consistent.
Professor Roy, beyond your academic self, you have had a long and illustrious career with the BJP. A lot of people have been making the point, who will make the point and are making the point, that if we talk about radical Islam, and the problems for minorities in countries like Bangladesh, what about Hindutva, where minorities are targeted because of their faith? We have had a recent example of a gentleman in a train compartment who was accused of taking beef and was slapped around, physically assaulted by a bunch of guys from the Hindu faith. So how would you answer that? Do you see a problem there?
No, I don't see a problem there. You are trying to find out whether a can of apples and a can of oranges are the same, or something. You are trying to look at one through the prism of one, so to say. Hindutva is something which permits one. You know, was our Thakur Ramakrishna, the person who you see over there, he had said, Jotomot Totopot. There are as many ways. Ways means ways of reaching God, as there are views. Which means that under Hindutva, it's such a huge umbrella that under Hindutva you can have any kind of view on religion. You can worship one God, you can worship three gods, you can worship 330 crores of gods, you can even worship no God, like the Charvaka philosophy. You can worship God in the form of a man, in the form of a woman, in the form of a child, in the form of a half man, half animal, like the Nrisingha Avatara. Is such a thing possible in Islam? It is not possible, and therefore the two simply cannot be compared. The two are as different as chalk and cheese. So what trying to draw some kind of example from a guy who was roughed up in a train because he was carrying beef is stupid. How do you have any idea how many Hindus were killed during the 1950 pogrom? There is no record. Because people are running for their lives. Where would they go to a police station and record? It is roughly considered that in the region of 50 to 60,000. And as I told you, on that single day, on one day, about that Anderson Bridge massacre. And in 1971, there was a massacre called Chuknagar, of which nobody knows, which was, I think, arguably the biggest case of mass murder in the Indian subcontinent. We talk of Jallianwala Bagh all the time. How many people were killed in Jallianwala Bagh? Some 1,500. How many people were killed in the Sikh pogrom of 1984 after Indira Gandhi died and Rajiv Gandhi justified it by saying that when a big tree falls, etc., etc.? More than 3,000. How many people died on Chuknagar? 10,000 people died on one single day. They were killed by machine gun fire, then by bayonet, then by trampling and unbelievable things. It has been recorded by a Bangladeshi Muslim writer called Muntasir Mamun. This is the state of affairs that can happen if militant Islam takes over. And Islam is fundamentally militant. It is there. It is. You should study the writings of Taslima Nasreen. Unfortunately, she writes only in Bengali. But Taslima Nasreen has said that it is not as if the people who are doing these mass killings, pogroms and all that, they are veering from Islam. They are sticking to Islam. They are following the tenets of Islam. And it is those tenets which are ordering them to do these mass murders.
Finally, Professor Roy, what happens to the Bangladeshi Hindu? Do you think they should continue to look, some of them at least should continue to look for help from India? Should India advance the CAA dates, or should they organize themselves socially and politically in Bangladesh now that Sheikh Hasina is no longer at the helm of affairs?
All of these. Let me take the last one. Organizing them politically is very difficult because all the people who had leadership potential in them, they all came away in the 1950s. A lot of them turned communist. Subsequently, the people who have been left there, they don't have any kind of political training or political acumen. Indeed, the main thing that is missing in Mohammad Yunus is this lack of political acumen. So, in spite of that, they must organize themselves politically. This is number one. Number two is the CAA and NRC. These must be implemented without delay and without that huge paperwork which has already been prescribed. This was not what was said by our leaders when the CAA and NRC were first, the idea was first launched. This was not what was said. It was said that any person coming from the countries of any Hindu, Muslim, any Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, Parsi coming from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, any of these countries would be given Indian citizenship. Now after that, what is this huge lot of paperwork that they are asking for? This was not on the cards. So this must go. But ultimately, at the end of the day, India must lean on Bangladesh lean very hard on Bangladesh, and it is not difficult, to make sure that the Hindus can live with as much respect as possible. So like, how should I say? The African Americans live in certain parts of the United States. They are not liked. I have not traveled very much in those parts, but I've traveled in Louisiana, one state, and there I got this wind that the African Americans are not liked. They call them uppity nigras. Never mind that. So today, the government of India must lean very hard, must apply relentless diplomatic pressure on Bangladesh to ensure the safety of Bangladeshi Hindus.
Right. Professor Roy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.